There is a weight that sits on your chest at 3 in the morning. It is the thought that your mind circles back to, no matter how many distractions you throw at it. It follows you into the car, into the shower, and worst of all, it even tries to follow you into your moments of peace. It is the problem that won't let you go. The one you've prayed about, the one you've cried about, the one you've tried to reason your way out of, and yet, it remains. Stubborn. Persistent. Unmoving. You have asked yourself, why is this happening to me? You have searched for the exit, the loophole, the quick fix that will make it disappear. But it doesn't disappear. And you feel like you are running in quicksand. But here is a shift in the axis of your understanding. What if the problem is not a wall in your path, but a door? What if the thing that is chasing you is not an enemy, but a guide? This is the truth that will unsettle you before it sets you free. The problem that won't let you go is the very thing that is trying to get you to wake up. It is persistent because you are deaf. It is loud because you are asleep. You have been treating the symptom while ignoring the soul. You have been asking for a change in your situation, but the universe, the divine, is asking for a change in you. You want the pain to stop, but the pain is not the problem. The pain is the herald. It is the messenger standing at the gate of your heart, knocking louder and louder because you refuse to open the door. You are trying to shake it off, but it is stuck to you because it is a part of the fabric of your growth. It is stuck to you like a shadow is stuck to your feet. You cannot outrun it. So, what if you stopped running? What if, instead of asking God to remove the problem, you asked God to reveal to you what the problem is carrying? Because a problem of this magnitude does not arrive empty-handed. It arrives with gifts you cannot see. It arrives with strength you cannot feel until you are broken. It arrives to strip you of the illusions you cling to, the illusion that you are in control, the illusion that you are self-sufficient, the illusion that this life is meant to be a garden of ease. The problem is the fire that burns away the rust of your soul. You are hurting because the rust is deep. The weight is heavy because you have been carrying things that were never meant to be carried. The problem is not your punishment, it is your purification. You have two choices in this moment. You can continue to wrestle with it, exhausting yourself in a battle of resistance, or you can embrace the wrestle. You can ask it, what are you here to teach me? And when you ask the question with a broken heart and an open mind, the chains begin to loosen. The problem does not disappear, but it transforms. It changes from a stone crushing you into a step elevating you. The problem that wouldn't let you go becomes the thing that finally sets you free, because it forces you to let go of everything else. So, welcome the discomfort. Let it sit with you. Let it change you. Because on the other side of this is a version of you that is stronger, wiser, and truer than the one who started this journey. Let the problem stay, if only so that it can show you the way out, the uninvited guest. That is the first truth you must sit with. The problem that will not release its grip on you, the one that invades your silence, your sleep, your sacred moments, arrived without knocking. You did not send for it. You did not manifest it through some cosmic error or personal failure. And yet, here it stands, at the threshold of your life, refusing to leave. This is the first and most crucial misunderstanding you have about your trial. You believe it is an accident. You believe it is a punishment. You believe it is evidence that you have been forgotten or overlooked by a universe that seems to be handing out ease to everyone but you. But what if the opposite is true? What if this persistent presence is not a sign of abandonment but a sign of selection? What if the problem that haunts you is actually the most deliberate visitor you will ever receive, sent not to destroy you but to dismantle the parts of you that are not real? Think about the nature of an uninvited guest. When someone arrives at your door unannounced, you are caught off guard. You are not prepared. You have not cleaned the house or arranged the furniture to impress them. You are exposed in your raw, unpolished state. This is exactly what the persistent problem does to your soul. It arrives when you least expect it, often in the middle of your comfort, and it forces you to see yourself as you truly are, not as you pretend to be. It strips away the performance. It silences the excuses. It stands in the room of your heart and waits for you to stop running long enough to look at it. And in that looking, something profound begins to shift. You realize that this guest has been here before. It is not a stranger, it is a mirror. It reflects back to you the parts of yourself you have been avoiding, your fears, your attachments, your illusions of control, your desperate need for things to be a certain way. The reason it will not leave is because you have not yet acknowledged what it is showing you. You have been too busy trying to push it out the door to see that it is holding a gift in its hands. The uninvited guest is persistent because your soul is resistant. You are fighting the very thing that is trying to save you. You are treating it like an enemy when it is, in fact, a healer. But healers often come with sharp instruments. They often cause discomfort before they bring relief. The problem that will not let you go is the surgeon's blade, cutting away the infected tissue of your ego, your pride, your false sense of security. You feel the pain of the incision and you cry out, "Why is this happening to me?" But the surgeon is not asking why, the surgeon is asking, "Are you ready to be healed?" And the problem remains until you answer that question honestly. It will not leave because it is faithful. It is more faithful to your growth than you are. You want to give up, the problem will not let you. You want to settle for less, the problem pushes you toward more. You want to numb yourself with distractions, the problem haunts you until you feel again. It is a relentless guardian of your highest potential, and it will stay at your door, knocking louder and louder, until you finally open it and invite it in for conversation. This is the radical reframe that changes everything. Stop asking, "How do I get rid of this problem?" and start asking, "What is this problem asking me to become?" The uninvited guest is not a thief, it is a teacher. It does not come to take from you, it comes to give to you, but it can only give when you stop resisting. The moment you accept its presence as purposeful, the dynamic shifts. You are no longer the victim of a circumstance, you are the student of a lesson. And the lesson is always the same beneath the surface, you are being called to awaken. You are being called to remember who you are beyond the chaos. You are being called to trust the process even when you cannot see the outcome. The problem stays because you are not yet ready to receive the wisdom it carries, and it will stay, patiently, relentlessly, until you are. This is not cruelty, this is love. This is the fierce love that refuses to let you remain small. So welcome the uninvited guest. Offer it a seat. Pour it some tea. And listen to what it has come all this way to tell you, the mirror effect. This is the second truth that will rearrange your understanding of the struggle that clings to you. The problem that will not release you is not some random affliction floating in from the outer world to torment you, it is a reflection, a precise and unfiltered image of your own interior landscape. You have been looking outward for the source of your distress, scanning your environment, your relationships, your circumstances, searching for the culprit that has stolen your peace. But the mirror does not lie. When you stand before a mirror, you do not blame the glass for the blemishes on your face, you understand that the glass is merely showing you what is already there. The same is true for the problem that haunts you. It is a mirror held up to your soul, revealing the contours of your attachments, the depths of your fears, and the places where you have fallen asleep to your own truth. And you cannot shake it because you cannot shake yourself. Wherever you go, you carry the reflection within you, and so the problem follows, persistent and unwavering, until you finally turn to face the image it is showing you. Consider the nature of what the mirror reveals. It shows you where you are attached. The problem that will not let you go is often rooted in a deep clinging to a particular outcome, a specific person, a desired identity, or a familiar comfort. You are suffering not because the problem itself is unbearable, but because you are attached to a version of life that the problem is threatening to dismantle. The mirror reflects this attachment back to you with brutal honesty. It says, "Look at how tightly you are holding on. Look at how much of your peace you have invested in something that was never guaranteed to stay. And because you refuse to release your grip, the problem persists, like a splinter that remains embedded until you accept that it must be removed. The pain is not caused by the splinter alone, the pain is caused by your resistance to its removal. The mirror is not punishing you, it is showing you the source of your own suffering so that you can finally let go. The mirror also reveals your fears. The problem that will not leave is often the very thing you have been most terrified of encountering. Perhaps it is the fear of failure, of rejection, of loss, of insignificance, of being exposed as insufficient. And here it stands, embodied in your circumstance, staring you straight in the eye. You have spent your life running from this fear, building elaborate defenses, crafting personas, seeking validation to prove that the fear is unfounded. But the fear has found you anyway, not to destroy you, but to show you that the monster you have been fleeing was never as powerful as you imagined. The mirror reveals that the fear is not the enemy, it is the illusion. And when you finally stand still and look into the reflection, you see that what you feared most is actually a doorway to your liberation. The problem stays because you have not yet looked deeply enough to see that the fear is hollow, that it has no substance beyond what your mind has given it, and that on the other side of that fear lies a freedom you cannot yet imagine. Finally, the mirror reveals where you are still asleep to your own truth. The problem that will not let you go is a wake-up call. It is jarring, uncomfortable, and relentless because you have been numbing yourself to your own reality. You have been living on the surface, distracted by the noise of daily life, avoiding the deep questions that your soul is desperate to ask. The problem forces those questions to the surface. It says, why are you here? What are you living for? Who are you when no one is watching? And your inability to answer these questions with clarity is precisely why the problem remains. It will keep shaking you until you wake up, until you stop sleepwalking through your existence and begin to live with intention, with presence, with authenticity. The mirror is not your enemy, it is your most honest friend. It reflects your attachments so you can release them. It reflects your fears so you can face them. It reflects your sleep so you can finally rise. And the problem that won't let you go is simply the mirror waiting for you to open your eyes and see yourself as you truly are, not as you have pretended to be, so that you can finally become who you were always meant to become, the architecture of stagnation. This is the third truth, and it is perhaps the most humbling revelation you will encounter on this journey. The problem that will not release its hold on you persists not because the universe is indifferent to your suffering, but because you have been trying to solve it with the very same mind that constructed it. You are standing inside a labyrinth, tracing the same corridors over and over again, convinced that if you just think harder, plan better, or strategize more meticulously, you will eventually find the exit. But the exit is not on the map you are holding. The map was drawn by the same architect who built the walls that confine you. Your current consciousness, your habitual way of thinking, your default patterns of response, these are the bricks and mortar of the problem itself. You cannot dismantle a prison with the tools that built it. And so the problem clings to you, stubborn and immovable, because it is waiting for you to stop applying the old solutions and start cultivating an entirely new way of being. Think about the nature of stagnation. Water that does not move becomes stagnant. It gathers debris, breeds decay, and loses its vitality. The same is true for your consciousness when it ceases to evolve. You have been approaching this problem from the same angle for months, perhaps years. You have replayed the same scenarios, rehearsed the same arguments, applied the same logic, and expected a different result. This is the definition of unconscious living. The problem is not the obstacle, the problem is your refusal to grow beyond the version of yourself that the obstacle was designed to challenge. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, does not remove challenges from your path, it expands your capacity to meet them. But expansion requires discomfort. It requires the dismantling of old structures. It requires you to admit that the person you are today is not equipped to handle the person you are becoming tomorrow. And so the problem stays, pressing against you, applying just enough pressure to force a fracture in your old ways, because only through that fracture can new light enter. Consider the futility of using the same mind to solve the problem that mind created. Every anxious thought you generate, every fearful scenario you project, every desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable is born from the same cognitive framework that produced your initial distress. You are running on a hamster wheel, expending immense energy, going nowhere, and wondering why you are so exhausted. The problem will not let you go because you have not yet had the humility to say, I do not know. You have not yet surrendered the illusion that you can figure this out on your own. You have not yet opened yourself to a wisdom that transcends your limited perspective. The architecture of stagnation is built on pride, on the belief that your intellect alone can navigate you through this darkness. But the darkness is not a puzzle to be solved, it is a mystery to be lived. And living a mystery requires a different kind of intelligence, one that listens rather than analyzes, one that receives rather than controls, one that trusts rather than fears. The problem persists because it is demanding an upgrade in your consciousness. It is not asking you to change your circumstances, it is asking you to change your state of being. It is asking you to shift from a mindset of scarcity to one of abundance, from fear to faith, from resistance to acceptance, from control to surrender. This is not a passive surrender that gives up, it is an active surrender that opens up. It is the recognition that the solution lies not in fixing the problem, but in transcending it. And transcendence only occurs when you stop fighting the problem and start learning from it. The moment you cease trying to solve it with the old mind, you create space for a new mind to emerge. And that new mind does not see the problem as a threat, it sees it as a teacher. It does not see the stagnation as a failure, it sees it as a gestation period. The problem that will not let you go is the midwife of your evolution, and it will stay, patient and relentless, until you are ready to be born into a new way of seeing, a new way of thinking, and a new way of being that no longer recognizes the old problem as a problem at all, the spiritual pressure. This is the fourth truth, and it will recalibrate everything you thought you knew about the weight you are carrying. That restlessness that gnaws at you, that anxiety that coils in your stomach, that sense of unease that accompanies you even in your quietest moments, this is not a malfunction of your psyche. This is not a weakness of your faith or a failure of your character. This is pressure, and pressure is a form of communication. It is the friction of your current state rubbing against your potential. It is the tension between who you are and who you are being called to become. And just as physical pressure in the earth creates diamonds, spiritual pressure in your soul is forging something invaluable within you. The problem that will not let you go is the source of this pressure, and it remains because you have been misreading its message. You have been interpreting the discomfort as a sign that something is wrong, when in reality, it is a sign that everything is aligning for a profound transformation. Consider the nature of spiritual pressure. When a musician tunes an instrument, they apply tension to the strings. Too little tension, and the instrument produces a dull, lifeless sound. Too much tension, and the string snaps. But the right amount of pressure produces a note that is clear, resonant, and true. The problem that clings to you is the tuning mechanism of your soul. It is stretching you, tightening you, applying just enough force to bring you into harmony with your higher purpose. The anxiety you feel is the sound of your soul being tuned. It is uncomfortable because you are being pulled away from the frequencies you have grown accustomed to, the frequencies of complacency, distraction, and superficiality. You are being drawn toward a higher pitch, a more refined vibration, and the transition is jarring. But the tension is not your enemy, it is your alignment. The problem stays because you are not yet in tune, and the universe, like a patient musician, will continue to adjust the strings until you resonate with the melody you were created to play. The restlessness you experience is also a sign of divine communication. When you feel that inner agitation, that inability to settle, that persistent sense that something is off, you are receiving a message from the depths of your being. It is a message that says, you are not home yet. You have not arrived at your destination. There is more for you to become, more for you to experience, more for you to give. And because you have been ignoring this message, it grows louder. It manifests as the problem that refuses to be ignored. It shows up in your relationships, your work, your health, your emotions, demanding your attention. The universe does not shout, it whispers. But when you do not listen to the whisper, it becomes a nudge. When you ignore the nudge, it becomes a shove. And when you resist the shove, it becomes a crisis. The problem that will not let you go is the crisis that has arrived because you have been deaf to the quieter signals of your own soul. It is not a punishment, it is a megaphone, amplifying the truth you have been too distracted to hear. The friction between your current state and your potential is the engine of your growth. You feel the strain because you are in transition. You are shedding an old skin, and the shedding process is not comfortable. The old self clings to you, familiar and safe, while the new self pushes from within, unfamiliar and demanding. The problem is the friction point where these two forces meet. It will not let you go because the shedding is not complete. You are still holding on to pieces of the old identity, old beliefs, old patterns that no longer serve you. And so the pressure builds, intensifying until you finally release your grip. The moment you let go, the friction ceases. The pressure dissipates. And you realize that the problem was never the enemy, it was the force that was pushing you toward your own expansion. The anxiety was the signal that you were about to break through to a new level of being. So do not run from the pressure. Do not numb the discomfort. Sit with it. Feel it fully. Ask it what it is telling you. Because the problem that will not let you go is the pressure that is molding you into the person you have always been meant to become, and it will stay until you finally recognize that the tension is not a sign of brokenness but of becoming, not a curse but a calling, not a weight to be escaped but a force to be embraced, the threshold. This is the fifth and final truth, the culmination of everything the persistent problem has been trying to teach you. You have been standing at a doorway for longer than you realize, and the problem that will not let you go is not a chain binding you to the floor, it is a key that has been placed in your hand, waiting for you to recognize its true purpose. You have been using it to scratch at the walls, to chip away at the lock, to fight against the door itself, when all along, the key was meant to turn. The moment you stop fighting the problem and start listening to it is the moment it transforms from a source of imprisonment into a source of liberation. This is the threshold you have been approaching with fear, but it is not a threshold of loss, it is a threshold of becoming. The problem does not disappear when you cross it, but it changes shape, it changes meaning, and it changes its relationship to you. It ceases to be the weight that crushes you and becomes the ground that supports you. Think about what it means to stand at a threshold. A threshold is a liminal space, a place of transition between what was and what will be. It is neither here nor there. It is the moment of suspension before the leap. And it is often the most terrifying place to stand because it requires you to let go of the familiar without yet seeing the destination. The problem that clings to you has brought you to this threshold. It has worn you down, stripped you of your illusions, and emptied you of your false certainty so that you would have no choice but to stand at this door and face what lies beyond. You have been asking for the problem to be removed, but the problem is the very thing that has led you here. It is the ferryman that has carried you across the river of your old life. And now that you have arrived at the shore, you cannot expect the ferryman to carry you further. The ferryman's job is done. The problem's role is complete. But you must take the next step yourself. The transformation occurs in the listening. You have spent so long trying to silence the problem, to drown it out with distractions, to reason it away with logic, to pray it away with desperation. But you have not truly listened to it. You have not sat with it in stillness and asked, "What are you here to tell me?" The problem has been speaking to you all along, but you have been too busy resisting to hear its voice. It speaks in the language of your frustration, your fear, your longing. It speaks in the ache of your heart and the restlessness of your spirit. And when you finally stop long enough to listen, you realize that the problem is not a message of doom, it is a message of direction. It is telling you where you need to grow, what you need to release, who you need to become. It is a compass disguised as a curse. The moment you listen, the compass points true, and the way forward becomes clear. The key turns when you shift your relationship to the problem. You stop seeing it as an obstacle to be overcome and start seeing it as an invitation to be accepted. You stop asking, "When will this end?" and start asking, "What is this beginning?" And in that shift, the problem loses its power over you. It no longer holds you captive because you are no longer fighting it. You are no longer exhausted by the battle because the battle is over. You have surrendered, not in defeat, but in wisdom. You have recognized that the problem was never the enemy, it was the teacher. And when the teacher has taught the lesson, the student no longer needs the lesson plan. The problem may remain in your life in its outward form, but it no longer owns you. It no longer defines you. It no longer steals your peace. It becomes a companion rather than a captor, a reminder of how far you have come rather than a marker of how stuck you are. The threshold is the place where chains become keys. It is where the heaviness you have carried transforms into the lightness of understanding. It is where the problem that would not let you go finally releases its grip, not because it has been defeated, but because you have been elevated. You have risen to a level of consciousness where the problem no longer fits. It is too small for the person you have become. And so it falls away, not as a victory over an enemy, but as a natural progression of your growth. The threshold is the doorway to this new reality, and you have been standing before it all along. The key is in your hand. The only question that remains is whether you are ready to turn it and step through into the life that has been waiting for you on the other side.